Now see, once you said that, you're already speaking around them and probably over their head and back in time and everything else, because they're gonna have to go back and look up what exactly is Shinola anyway. Right. So while you're at it, maybe you want to look up Shinola. It sounds just like it spells Shinola, Shinola. Meanwhile, carrying right along, we're going to go ahead and start up our slideshow and continue reading from the book of Crosby. Reading today, from the autobiography of Dr. Edward W. Crosby, as we said previously, the father of Black History Month. So let's see what Dr. Crosby has to say today. We're in the state of, we're in between Missouri and Illinois. We're living in Missouri. He's working in Illinois at the experiment in higher education. The experiment in higher education. And this was a project that was sponsored by SIU, Southern Illinois University, in collaboration with the Office of Economic Opportunity, otherwise known as OEO. So we're going to just go back a little ways here to the top of this little paragraph here and bring you on in. He was giving us some statistics about life in Black communities all over the United States at this time, which the year is about 1963, 1964, somewhere around there. These are bleak statistics. Bleak statistics. Their impact is even greater because they apply to a large segment of the Black population and not to a relatively negligible one. To quote the literacy study conducted in East St. Louis by the Illinois Department of Public Aid, in Chicago, the dregs of Woodlawn and communities like it is obscured by the momentum in the business districts, cultural centers, outer ring, and new downtown neighborhoods. The dirge of the depressed enclave is overpowered by the noise and towering skyline of a magnificent city. Magnificent. Just imagine the magnificent skyline of Chicago, Illinois. But in East St. Louis, the social drag of thousands of undereducated is visibly slowing the race to a halt. 1/4 of the city is faltering, and it is apparent that the forward thrust of this downstate urban center is about to sputter to a stop. The lesson of East St. Louis is a lesson for all urban centers, large and small. Let some dislocation reach unmanageable proportions, and the forward thrust of the city is halted. To keep social dislocation within limits or eliminate it entirely, there must be a complete marshaling of the social, cultural, and economic institutions of the city. Cities, large and small, must bend their collective powers to the task of social renaissance. So talking about a social rebirth of sorts, there needs to happen in all of these major cities, East St. Louis just being one example of out of hundreds that you can find all over the United States of America. Akron, Ohio being very similar to East St. Louis. In other words, it's on the other side of the river from the major city in the area, which in this case is Cleveland. In that case, it was St. Louis, Missouri. The picture is bleak also because there is no indication of any improvement. The population of the city declined slightly between 1950 and 1960. The continued exodus of white residents to suburban areas was almost balanced by the relatively high birth rate of non-white residents. But in terms of income and employment statistics, the trend was downward. In a recent study of rates and patterns of East St. Louis delinquency, the implications were that for the inner city zone, a black youth has less than a 50% chance, less than a 50% chance of not being picked up by a law officer. Oops, wrong way. Of not being picked up by a law officer. Where was I at? If he remains in the community until age 18. This then is the community within which Southern Illinois University launched its experiment, which dealt directly with some of the factors outlined above, which contributed most significantly to the state EHE found in East St. Louis. Stated simply, the problem is for universities to rethink the means by which they can come to grips with the lifestyles of the student body and the community from which he or she comes. How can a university help a young man who has graduated from a school in his community and his university instructor believes he has been damaged or deprived to the point where his diagnosis for success will be minimal? How can the university devise an educational program that can or will respond to the students' undeveloped learning processes? How can the university respond to the problem? That is, if anything is not damaged, but simply out of sync with the fixed learning style employed by the school or the university. What will keep such students in school, correct their deficiencies, and upgrade them to the point where the student can function on a level with other students? Can the university provide such young people with an education that is useful, not only to themselves, but also to their community? How can universities specify and train new and different levels of personnel to effect needed changes in the community? And how can the university meaningfully translate a student's knowledge into usable, constructive, and critical tools for the intervention in his or her community's life of East St. Louis or somewhere else for that matter? EHE's underlying assumption was that the typical liberal arts education of today's secondary schools, colleges, and universities is virtually devoid of meaning for many middle or upper class white youth and has even less relevance for African American youth. The rigid and mechanistic curriculum, the large anonymous classroom setting, the less than inspired teaching faculties, the commuter college with little in the way of identity to offer the student privilege to enroll. These are the problems facing students which clearly cross class, ethnic, and geographic boundaries. These educational establishments affect the greatest damage on the students from the lower socio-economic strata of society. It can even be said the failure of American education to significantly affect or make a substantial attempt to affect the problems, not so much of poverty, but rather its inability to address the culture these students bring with them to the educational setting. In their high schools, they are for the most part taught in accord with a learning model that was developed in the 1890s based in agrarian culture. Students were not allowed to think for themselves, to make use of the thinking processes they developed while living and learning in their home communities. These students were and still are introduced to the school's learning process as if their brains were a complete tabula rasa. Now, for those of you who don't know Latin, tabula rasa or tabula rasa, however you want to say it, but I look at it as tabula rasa, means a blank slate. In other words, the schools have been and still are treating students as if they come to school and don't know shit from Shinola. See, you wondered how I was going to get back to that, didn't you? You wondered how that was relevant? There you go. Relevant as hell. Okay? Don't know shit from Shinola. Once EHE's major players in this incipient educational drama had arrived and the drama's raison d'etre was discussed, Hyman Frankel was confirmed as EHE's executive director. Donald M. Henderson was named deputy director. Harold Cohen, who had directed educational programs in Washington, D.C.'s penal institutions, accepted the director of education position. Helen Hill from D.C. did not attend the planning sessions, but she agreed to perform as EHE's administrative assistant. As the experiment worked out its kinks, other critical staff positions were created and filled. I accepted the director of teacher counselors position. This position allowed me to have direct contact with EHE's most valuable teaching and counseling cadre. The teacher counselor position was defined in the funding proposal as follows. The teacher counselor will be expected through and with the help of his or her students to accumulate the knowledge and information for defining the functional requirement of these roles. Furthermore, she or he will also be responsible for helping to design and conduct the training the students must undergo in order to perform their roles adequately. Under the leadership of the teacher counselor, information about the nature and goals of the project will have to be communicated to the community. The students will be organized into teams under the supervision of the teacher counselor to serve as informants and the project and emissaries to the community. Prior to the actual recruitment of teacher counselors as a non-professional adjunct to the regular activities, teaching and counseling of the university, it was difficult to envision in response to the nature of the task to be performed, the necessary educational prerequisites. During the teacher counselor selection period, it became increasingly clear to the experiment's administrative staff that as much formal education as possible was desirable, but not mandatory. As a result, all teacher counselors are high school graduates or the equivalent. 4 of them have attended college from 1 to 3 years, and 6 have bachelor degrees. Major areas of concentration include art education, social studies, biology, psychology, business administration, and political science. 4 teacher counselors will, during the term of their employment, pursue graduate degrees on the Edwardsville campus in marketing, psychology, community planning, and biology. All right. Those counselors who do not possess degrees had relevant experiences either with the process of group self-study methods now being used in inmate rehab programs, or they had worked with the youth crime and delinquency division of an urban police department. Some teacher counselors were previously employed with the following organizations: the United Planning Organization, Washington, D.C., Upward Bound Project at Hiram College, Neighborhood Youth Corps in Cleveland, Cleveland Public Schools, Ohio, Community Welfare Council in Sacramento, California, and New Careers Development Project in Sacramento, California. Even with these educational and work experiences, the teacher counselors as a group still had to undergo a rather rigorous training process that consisted of an introduction to educational advances such as programmed instruction, what it can and cannot do, the effects of income and social class on student achievement, the causes of differential achievement and poor goal selection, and the use of group dynamics such as role-playing, self-study, interviewing techniques, the essentials of counseling, and lesson planning, student academic and behavior assessment, etc. So all of these things were important in Dr. Crosby's role as the director of the teacher counselors, and all of them were important for him to focus on and make sure that his staff members were focused in a similar manner. Okay, so we're going to break off right there, and we'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, same Black Facts channel, the Tubular Black Facts channel, right here on YouTube, which you should have already subscribed to. And if you haven't, do so right now. If you have, then go ahead and drop a line, give us a donation, let us know that you're out there. We need your support. We need to know that you're watching. Just the fact that you're watching helps keep us buoyed, keeps our spirits buoyed, keeps us above our head above water, it allows us to be able to float our boat. And at the same time, we'll make sure you don't drown as well, because we'll have a boat right here you can grab onto and stay afloat. Meanwhile, we're going to say peace out without a doubt, with plenty of justice, because anything less disgusts us. And we're going to say peace and blessings to Fetty Red and Esther Owens and whoever else is out there watching that didn't wave at us. We'll be black tonight, of course, at 9 o'clock. This is Doc Ock at noon and 9, hoping that everything's real fine. Signing out without a doubt. We'll be black tonight at 9. Look for us then with a great big grin.